Welcome back to Comic Krackle. I'm your host, Kirby, and today I'm with comic critic extraordinaire, Jared Bird.
No.
Today we're going to talk about Zoe Thorogood, one of my favorite writers, artists of the new generation, and It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth and the Impending Blindness of Billie Scott. I forgot that there were more words in there earlier whenever I was talking about the book because I keep on referring to it as It's Lonely. Um, but Jared, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Well, of course, just it's good to chat about, especially like independent comics creators.
hmm
We were talking about that off mic, just you know, getting more eyes on books, talking about creators that are exciting for the medium and
Yeah,
actively pushing that medium forward. Um, but that's specifically why I wanted to talk about Zoe Thorogood, just
yeah,
because I had seen some of her like web comics. I had first been introduced to her. It was around the Billy Scott era. I
mm,
had seen all of the buzz, and I was like, I'll get around to reading her work at some point. And then I saw a lot of the web comics that she was doing. It was like, you know, three pictures on Twitter that she would post, and I'm
yeah,
like, oh, this creator is like specifically talking to me. I need to read their
yeah,
work. And I was just like, that's it. All I want to do now is just make a video on her work and just talking about how much I love it. Um,
yeah.
but so we'll jump into it. Uh, what first made you aware of Zoe Thorogood's body of work?
Um, so it was a kind of interesting situation. I had heard about It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth and the Impending Brightness of Billy Scott when they had come out, but I wasn't really actively reading comics at the time.
Mm,
Like I pick up very rarely stuff, the Marvel DC stuff, but it was during kind of a lull period where I wasn't really checking out many comics. So I'd heard this kind of hype about, this great graphic novels. And I was like, oh, I'll get to them eventually, right?
mhm.
When you're only buying, I was reading a lot of like Japanese manga at the time instead. And so when you're only buying like two, graphic novels a month, like Western graphic novels, it's like, okay, you become really picky with with what you end up doing. Um, then at university, during the second year of university, a professor recommended to me that I read It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth.
Really?
Um, yeah, because she is super interested in formalism and like experiments in the comics form and how
Mm,
they use like experimental language. And I was fully back into comics at this point, but um, like I still had missed stuff. And I was like, oh, I should finally get around to that. And I went to the university library and I pulled a copy of it. I borrowed it. It's in our library actually, which is pretty cool.
that's awesome.
And I read maybe 10 pages and then I put the book down and I took the bus to my local comic shop and I bought it without hesitation. As soon as I got to the start of that. And then just for good measure, I went back the next day because I finished it in one reading set, one sitting. And then the next day I went back and I bought the Impending Brightness of Billy Scott. And I found out that she was doing Hack Slash. And I love the like Tim Seeley original like Hack Slash books. So that got added to my pull list and it just very rapidly was like, this is great stuff. This is really good.
Mhm.
I'm going to keep an eye on this creator and their work. Yeah. So I would say like within the year of It's Lonely coming out, so like 2023-ish.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, and that's around the time where I like really started paying attention to her work.
Yeah.
But I so in preparation for the video, I was,
Yeah.
wanting to go through it more of like a critical lens where
Yeah.
I might enjoy a story reading it for the first time, but I can enjoy something that's, you know, Etrigan and
Hmm.
Ultimate Spider-Man, and like not thinking about it as intricately as I
Yeah.
try to do now for like videos. And so revisiting it and reading through all of her work, I was just blown away by making comics that you can only do as a comic.
Yeah.
Um, pushing the boundaries for what can be done, and the marching orders for creators basically going forward,
Mm.
and doing something that's not made to be adapted in the same way that some comics are created as springboards
Mm.
for further adaptation. And whenever I was listening to a Q&A that Zoe had done on her YouTube channel, she had said that the book was primarily inspired with pushing those boundaries because of Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yeah.
And she had said that that is a game that, obviously breaks the fourth wall, but it's a game that could only be a game. And
Yeah.
she thought about making a comic that could only be a comic, but pushes that boundary. So it kind of
Mm.
blurs that line. And once I heard that, I was like, your thinking was so far ahead of where I was even thinking that I was critically. And
Yeah.
so I'm just like, wow, you're like doing chess moves and I'm playing checkers like
Yeah.
poorly. But so what specifically stood out to you whenever it comes to the impending blindness? We'll start there with Billy Scott.
Yeah. When I went back and read it, I was really struck by the kind of so the artwork was great, obviously. I really like Zoe's art style because I think it's this fun mix of like it has, cartoony exaggerated elements, but it's still like, in air brackets realistic.
Mhm.
um in a way that like it's like a nice blend of the two, and sometimes it leans more into one, sometimes it leans more into the other. And it's I really liked how in the impending blindness of Billy Scott, you know it's an interesting mix of like the story and the narrative has some sort of kind of fictionalization to it, some elements which are not realistic or anything like that. um, for just the sheer premise of it being that you've been given a strict deadline to when you're going blind is maybe not something that would necessarily happen to a lot of people. Might happen, but not necessarily a commonplace experience. But then using like finding the very real feelings and kind of palpable emotions in that. I was really struck by how empathetic it was.
Mhm.
The characters felt like characters, and Billie feels like someone that by the end of it. You understand her. Zoe wasn't afraid to make her flawed. She could, Billie Scott is a bit petulant, a bit, she's upset, at this horrible situation. She's not taking it well. She does stuff that's stupid and reckless,
Mhm.
and you can connect with her and you can empathize with her and really understand her perspective. But at the same time, she's not like some sort of perfect heroine. She makes mistakes, she makes flaws, she kind of can be a little bad to some of her friends, and stuff like that. And I really was struck by that element of it, as well as the art style. So I really liked how it kind of played with that kind of mixture of fantasy and reality, the cartoon and the realistic, and then it at the core of it is just this very very emotional truth.
Mhm.
When you like it's a comic that made me cry. Like when I got to the end of it, I was like shedding a tear, because it was really I found it really moving, because I think it speaks to the emotional truth of being an artist and valuing your art. But it also speaks to an emotional truth of being an artist that I don't think I see get explored too much, is the dreaded realization of what are you if not for your art.
Mhm.
So if you only value yourself based off of your art and your ability to make art, what happens if you lose that ability to make art? And I don't think I like stuff explores it, but I don't think I think that was a really intimate exploring of it, where it's like, okay, if you're making something visual and you lose the ability to see, how do you where do you go from there? Yeah, it's a very emotional book, and I really connected to it because of that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly it. And that's what I really latched on to, especially, I feel like in the wake of COVID, the utilization of agoraphobia has
Yeah,
automatically tied me in with a character. And
yeah,
so I I see that at the beginning, and you see Billie
yeah.
agoraphobic tied directly into the room to the point where she doesn't even know the people that she lives around. In the entire
Yeah.
book is about her exploring the community and people that are underserved in that community, um, but also how empathetic others are to her, and
Mm.
she learns to be that other person.
Yeah.
And divorcing an artist just from the idea that their self-worth is tied to the art that they produce, and
Mm.
like a commodification of who they are, um, and she basically changes the idea from I need to make these, 12 pieces uh,
Mm.
before I go blind just to prove that I did it, to
Yeah.
more of I'm going to meet all of these people in the community, and the farther I
Yeah.
go, the more I want to express who I am and see a different perspective, no pun intended,
Yeah. Yeah.
with that. But like that really stood out to me, just how empathetic, like you were saying, that book felt, where it was tangible, but
Mm.
also being able to see like this underside of where putting your self-worth as an
Mm.
artist is. If when am I without my art? And I think that was the start of the breakthrough that I had, um, while visiting some of the like monologues that are in both this and It's Lonely, and specifically tying conveying emotion through art as a means to empathize. Conveying that in a meaningful way that would be able to be passed on. I think that's the heart of comics. Just
Yeah.
understanding that at the baseline. And I don't think I've seen it put in a way that was more succinct than the closing dialogue, in Billy Scott.
Mm.
But just seeing an artist that starts out in the industry immediately getting buzzed, but being one completely fully formed as
Yeah.
a writer, artist, creator, and also breaking those barriers for what can be done. It's like this creator is one that will be generational talent,
Yeah.
which will obviously, you know, be an ongoing theme with her reacting
Yeah.
to that, and It's Lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but just seeing an artist that's fully formed right out of the box, and their first debut is one that everybody says you want to make a good first impression, and this Billy Scott is probably the best first impression that you can have as a writer and
Mm.
artist.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so it really stood out to me, but there was something else that I think was ongoing motifs that I had realized whenever I was reading it, and it was specifically, no matter how cartoony the illustrations are of the people,
Yeah.
there's always something in the eyes of
Mm.
each of her characters which like radiates a truth. And
Yeah.
even if like the pencils are a little sketchy, it's thinner lining, it's not
Yeah.
supposed to be photorealistic, but the eyes really sell you on being in the moment and in that
Yeah.
perspective. And I think that the ongoing motif throughout Billy Scott being surrounding eyes, and
Yeah.
visualizing and realizing the world around you, I think that really stood out to me. But then the ongoing themes of, you know, parents and their children,
Mm.
and being put into a box that you you don't believe was made for you, and did I make
Yeah.
this decision for me? I
Yeah.
think that a lot of that was the setup that really needed to be done so you get that background. Obviously, this
Mm.
isn't as autobiographical as It's Lonely,
Yeah.
but it does give the perspective of where she was coming from to focus on that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't believe that that's a first comic, and I was
Yeah.
just I I remember putting it down for the first time,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I want to go back and reread it. Like that, I not only did I have a good time, but it
Yeah.
was like an experience that I've never had before. So,
I wait.
go
I will
ahead.
add one anecdote. It's just an interesting anecdote. I can't remember who. I think the person who told me this story was Alison Sampson,
Mhm.
who's a British comics writer and artist. And it was either Alison Sampson or Lucy Sullivan. It was one of the two. I'm pretty sure it's Alison, but if I got that wrong, Alison, please don't kill me. You're amazing. Or Lucy, please don't kill me. You're amazing. And they were talking about seeing, a little girl coming up to them, or a teenage girl coming up to them and showing them some pages and be like, "Do you think that these are good pages? You have sequential art, like to do a little portfolio review thing." And and she was like gobsmacked by the pages and the work involved with them, and immediately reached out to Avery Hill Publishing and was like, "I think this is someone that you should speak to," because it was Zoe Thorogood and it was pages from Billie Scott. Um, and that I found when I was told that story, I was just so mind blown by it because it is, like you said, someone coming out the gate kind of fully formed in a sense. Like, she's got other kind of miscellaneous work from that time period. Um, just afterwards she did like Joe Hill's Reign
Mhm.
with Chris Rial. I think it's Chris Rial, adapting a short story of his, and you can kind of see, maybe some of the learning curve there in terms of like weekly or monthly comics. But with Billy Scott, it is such like a knocking the doors down entrance of like, this is what I want to do as a creator. This is what I'm trying to say. I'm interested in pushing forward. Um, the medium of comics, like even just the trim size of Billy Scott, the fact that it's a pretty big book physically. When you read it, it is above the normal trim size. I can't tell you the specifics of what it is. Like it's bigger and it's the same price. It's like it is as the same price you'd pay for any graphic novel, but it is physically larger because the art is meant to be seen on a bigger scale,
Mhm.
right? And I really like that. Just something like that is such a fun thing to do, where it's kind of the courage of not having the same expectations to follow. Where it is like, yeah, it's your first book, sure, do it, why not, right? But then also the idea of just actively wanting to push things forward. Like you said, like it is just one hell of a first. The debut graphic novel is just an insane thought, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it I always think of it with the newer generation. I feel like the vast majority of creators that I'm excited about, they always
Mm.
have something at the beginning of their career that I will always associate with them. Um,
Yeah.
and in a similar way, like Dennis Camp, obviously 20th Century Men. He had done projects
Yeah.
before that, but I think that 20th Century Men is one of the most important comics of the past like 20 years.
Yeah.
Um, and fully establishing who he is and the stories that he wants to tell, and giving us a perspective into where he's coming from and what he's going
Hmm.
to do in the future. There's aspects of all of the stories moving forward, like
Yeah.
the alternate history, sci-fi, political thriller,
Hmm.
political understanding with a message to be retained. It's like that's ultimates.
Yeah.
That can radiate throughout the rest of his work, but
Yeah.
having one of those books early in your career would benefit the creator. And
Yeah,
so coming right out of the box and saying, "Hi, I'm Zoe, and this is what I'm about," and
yeah, yeah,
you, for lack of a better term, you're giving the Zoe 101.
yeah, yeah. It's funny as well that you mentioned 20th Century Men, because the reason that that lecturer of mine recommended that I read It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth is because I recommended to her that she read 20th Century Men.
Mm,
So it was like, hey, I like this book that experiments with form, and I should check out this book that experiments with form. So it's an interesting little anecdote there.
that's so funny. And it's very funny because I think of creators in generations,
Yeah.
the vast majority of the time, like when I first am introduced to them, um,
Mm.
and like, you know, the Bendis bunch that was coming out late 90s, early 2000s. You
Yeah.
have the Hickmans that were coming out like late 2000s, early 2010s. But I think like Dennis Camp, Zoe Thorogood, um, Ramvi, obviously, friend of the
Yeah.
channel. Uh, but like getting that start in the 2010s going on to now to be full superstars in their own right, the Al Ewings. You know, if I was gonna go on, it would just be this super long list that I would be like debating back and forth on who qualifies. But it's like all of these creators are coming to the medium where they're either students or children,
Yeah.
meaning like who are students of Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, who
Yeah.
are, you know, birthed from the same things as them. Um, Dennis Camp is like he was a huge Morrison and Moore fan,
Yeah.
and like used to have a little blog that he would
Yeah.
dissect Seven Soldiers and everything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a student of Morrison and Moore,
Yeah.
and it coming to the medium um like Zoe was, where
Yeah.
she was bringing a different aspect into the comic scene, so the sentiment
Yeah.
towards, you know, film and video
Mm.
games, uh bringing that into comics, and it's like a wake up call where
Yeah.
now we can have students and children of Zoe Thorogood in the future.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. Yeah.
comics are alive and healthy now.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
goodness. Um, but we'll go ahead and jump into It's Lonely.
Yeah.
Uh, so will you talk about some of the most important aspects of It's Lonely, or the things that resonated the most with you?
Well, to be honest, I mean, this is no, secret or anything. I'm quite happy to share that a huge thing that resonated with me about It's Lonely um was the way that it explores mental health,
Mhm,
depression, suicidal ideation, self-harm. Those are all things that um, I've had personal experience with and I have a personal understanding and relationship with. So it really did, yeah, like I said earlier, I was sold on it in the first like 5 pages because in the first 5 pages she like looks at herself in the mirror and it's like, I want to kill myself.
mhm,
And I really appreciated the transparency and honesty of that. Like, I know that in the kind of recent, like last decade or so, there's been kind of a gradual destigmatization of mental health. But I still think there's a lot of work to be done. I still think there's a lot of sensitivity around it that's just adopting a different sense.
mhm,
I remember reading an article about how the Grunge Museum in Seattle changed an exhibition information piece to say that Kurt Cobain unalived himself, and I thought that that was such a um, just it was like you're re-stigmatizing it
mhm,
and justifying it by, oh, you're appealing to sensitivities. Just say the truth. It was 3 decades ago. Anyone who's going to the Grunge Museum probably knows what happened to Kurt Cobain. Um, and so I appreciated that it's lonely at the center of the earth. It's straight up with it from the start of the book. And
mhm,
it wears that on its sleeve very transparently. But it also shows some of the messiness and the complexities of that. Like obviously happy being a metaphor for depression. that I find really moving. And he's slightly terrifying and slightly adorable at the same time.
Yep.
Like I like that he's almost a comforting presence because that's true. Sometimes it is. It's something people don't talk about, but sometimes you end up missing being depressed when you're not.
Mhm.
Because you think, oh, I miss being able to just lounge around in bed all day and not feel bad about
Yeah.
it. And I really just like the way that it captures so many of the complexities of that. The way that she enjoys hanging around her friend, she enjoys going to the convention with her, but she's also terrified and it's anxious and it's awkward and it's kind of overwhelming and it's kind of an exhausting experience. And just all of those complexities, and just the way that it's just ever a bit ever present.
Mhm.
It's just always there. It is a through line throughout the book. And, I'm not saying everything needs to explore mental health in that detail, because I would rather stuff, do it tastefully and do it well. I
Yeah.
have no interest in things exploring it and then mishandling it completely. But I think it was really bold for you know, this is one of her earliest major projects. It's the book that put her on the map because she has, the guts to turn around and be like, yeah, I've entered the comics business successfully and I really want to die, right?
Mhm.
And I think that is it's such like I respect the openness of it,
Yeah.
to say, that it's not just happiness, to do an autobiographic novel that isn't just happiness, sunshine and rainbows. It's mainly her struggling with writer's block and feeling like she's going mad and all of these different pits of misery and difficulties and everything. That's probably the thing that draws me to the book the most. And then I love the way that she uses the comics form to better supplement that. You know, this book is mind blowing in the different ranges of places that it goes to. The different art styles that she utilizes, the fact that she uses photography, the structure of it, going from double page spreads to like an entire page that is just a single text message,
Mhm.
and the range of which she demonstrates sometimes on the same page where she'll draw in a bunch of different art styles on the same page, like all the Zoes meeting each other. Well, the fact that the book restarts halfway through,
Yeah.
it puts the cover and the first image again, and the image text credits again, and it just goes and it is such a ridiculously out there thing to do, and I love it wholeheartedly. I genuinely think that it is one of the best graphic novels that I've ever read, full stop. And I think there's a reason it resonated with people so much because I think that people were drawn to the transparency and the honesty of it, and then the kind of experimentation of it.
Mhm.
That it's just everything is in service to telling the story as intimately as it possibly can be, warts and all. And I think there's something very beautiful about that.
Yeah. And I think that an aspect of it that I really latched onto where you were hitting on the aspects of mental health. I think that it never talks down to the reader, um, because it reads like a journal entry. It
Yeah,
reads like uh, the manifestation and um, visualizing a journal that's not supposed to be for the reader, where
yeah,
we get that insight into it, but it's never talking down to you because you're not the audience. It's
yeah.
the various versions of herself that she's talking to, and we're just along for the ride. And so it's not written for relatability, and that's even a scene that really stood out to
Yeah,
me where she's at the con and everybody just all of their words just break down to relatable.
yeah,
And and whenever she had spoken on it, she had said, it's not a condemnation of people feeling like this is relatable. It's just
mm,
how many of us have to have the same emotions, and that like relatable is just a universal
mm,
experience, but it's
mm,
also stigmatized. We we
yeah,
we can't talk about our depression, and Even if they try to destigmatize it, it's like you were saying, it's like unaliving. Well, now we're stigmatizing the word
Yeah.
suicide. I mean,
Yeah.
like, we can't start talking about it if we can't use the correct words.
Yeah.
And I think that the relatability, and that was originally going to be what the title of the video was, is Zoe Thorogood is not relatable. Because
Yeah.
I thought that that was just like, it was very good, but I didn't want to come off like one of those like woke,
Yeah.
like one
Yeah.
of those
Yeah. Yeah.
weirdos.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like it's not chasing relatability.
Yeah.
This is relatable because it's dealing with the human experience. And I remember I finished reading this book um, for the second time, thinking about it through a critical lens. And
Mm.
I turned to my wife, and, she doesn't read comics,
Yeah.
rarely, if at all. Like, she has her own thing she's interested in.
Yeah.
Um, but I turned to her whenever I finished, and I just said, "This is a book that I need you to read."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Why? What is it?" Because I think the only times I've made her do that is like,
Yeah.
like a Batman book or something, whatever,
Yeah.
like way back when. But I
Yeah.
was like, this explores the medium in a way that I can't verbalize in the moment because I'm still
Yeah.
trying to process it. But I need you to experience something alongside me that
Mhm.
we can both
Mm.
enjoy and understand. Like, you can understand comics if you read this book,
Yeah.
um, and making it approachable for somebody who doesn't read comics, I think
Yeah.
is uniquely important.
Yeah.
But then thinking about this from, an understanding of publishing, I
Mm.
think that I think there's bits in this book that made me laugh because I know little portions about publishing, like
Yeah.
restarting, or like there's this one emotional beat that did bring me to tears.
Yes.
And after the fact, I had to laugh about it because there's the moment where it's like the journal entry, and
Yeah.
it's the one specific page, write down your experiences with this, in your own words. I'll give you a page, here you go. And it's just a
Yeah.
blank page, and I thought
Yeah.
it was so daring to do that for
Yeah.
an OGN. I know, page rates, you have to pay
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the amount of pages, but like restarting halfway through and,
Yeah.
reprinting different aspects. The book is daring, not just because of the subject matter, but
Yeah.
doing something that it's hard to discuss because
Yeah.
you might have to know something about the publishing side and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's completely blown away,
Yeah.
absolute cinema.
Yeah. I actually think the title of the video should be Can Zoe Thorogood from It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth beat Absolute Batman? But anyways, no, I had that same experience where I recommended someone I know, I recommended that they read It's Only at the Center of the Earth. And they don't really read comics, but they're super interested in fiction that represents mental health.
Mm,
And so I said, check this out, right? And they literally they read it, and maybe a week later they hauled ass to a convention, and they were like, yeah, Zoe's going, so I'm gonna like say hi to her and introduce themselves, and spoke to, got pictures with her, spoke to her for a while, like I think half an hour or something like that. And it was so cool because I was like, oh, this is someone who's never read a comic in their life, apart from like Tintin. And like and they were so moved by it that they were like, I really want to have that experience of just being able to thank this person, not
mm.
even for the relatable thing, because I pointed out, like, they read the book, they saw the bit about relatability, they were just like, thank you for making something like this,
Yeah,
you know um and yeah, I think it is such a ballsy move. And I also think it's strange that I gained, the more that time I've spent in the UK comics community, the more that I've like almost like come to find this even more like for some reason just stuff like the flats in the UK look like the flat that she's living in at the start of it, and like
Mm,
the pages from the end, the location right from the end. I've been there. The place where she talks about the meeting, with being on a table read with a bunch of other people who work at Image, including Ram V and Kieran Gillen. Like I've been to that bookstore,
mm-hmm,
and it's like it adds a new layer of reality to it where it's like it kind of is like, yeah, this is a lived-in experience, this is
mm-hmm,
very much a lived-in experience, and you see how mental health is treated in the UK. And it's quite strange. I remember during a particularly bad period here, I did a phone call to try and reach out to mental health professionals and stuff. And, the first thing that it was like, they're like, okay, so like, have you ever been on Prozac before? And I was like, how is that the first thing that comes up? I was mortified, right? I called them and I was like, these bad things have happened in my life in this experience, and I want to just be able to find a mental health support system to look
mm-hmm.
forward to. And the response, it's a very tired middle-aged woman on the phone being like, "Have you ever been on Prozac before, love?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't. Would you?" No, I don't
Can
want
we
to.
talk about it or
Yeah,
something?
can I find someone to talk to about this?
Yeah.
No, it was like I always say that's one of the biggest. That was such a humbling moment for me, where I had a bit of a like just get over it moment. And,
Mm-hmm,
not in a negative way, but I was like, I have to get over myself because clearly, I'm not, there's not a system inbuilt to help me. And I do think that the more things that bring eyes to that, the better. So I really just applaud the book and give it all the awards, absolute cinema,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a great book,
It's
truly great book.
and there's there's so many other things that not just in this book, but like you were talking about hack slash, and her work in there.
Yeah,
And it's so funny that she goes from Billy Scott to Rain, which she
yeah,
was just doing the art on, and there was a writer on it,
yeah,
does It's Lonely, and then immediately does Hack Slash,
yeah,
which we were saying right before this, but Zoe Thorogood on an Evil Dead book would
yeah,
be even better. But
yeah,
it's like it's playing with the cheesiness and the cheesecake aspect.
yeah,
Um, but like it always sells something to you. It
yeah,
always has something to say, whether it's
yeah,
about, family relationships or,
mm,
you know, even if it's playing up the cheesecake. But
yeah,
it's never shying away from people's imperfections, which I
yeah,
think is the main overarching aspect that I really love about all of her pencils, where it
yeah,
never shies away from portraying herself or Billie or
yeah.
the main character from Hack Slash,
Cassie Hack, yeah,
Cassie Hack. Uh, Never shies away from showing them as people that need improvement
yeah,
and are always constantly striving for it. And like you had said, uh, depression and mental health plays an important aspect in It's Lonely. And I think that the most moving part of it was not that, she beats it by the end.
yeah, yeah,
We're not power scaling Zoe
yeah,
and saying, well,
yeah,
actually she beat depression. So, she's up here. Um,
yeah,
but like it's always there, but you can make a conscious effort to improve your yourself and your living
yeah,
conditions and the situations that you put yourself in. But mental health isn't something where you get a pill, you get a prescription,
yeah,
and then you're fine. It's
yeah,
something that you have to struggle with over time,
yeah,
and you you have good days and you have bad days, and it's a process, and that's why I like that at the end she's not fixed. because none of us are.
Yeah.
But that's something that we can strive for, and kind of having this ambiguous ending, um,
Yeah.
with her moving on into the world and wanting to
Yeah.
be this, revitalized version is
Yeah.
something that is very important. But also playing with the medium, I really
Mm.
love the aspect that all of her paneling work, it's all hand drawn,
Yeah.
and you can see the little like uh on the panels, you can see where it's drawn, you can see those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that that kind of plays towards the themes of like
Yeah.
imperfectly perfect.
Yes.
And it's not just they're all computer generated and
Yeah.
I'm hacking into the matrix while I'm making this
Yeah.
book, but like it lends a level of like authenticity
Yeah.
when portraying something like that. And I think that that's something that I definitely have latched onto, and I think that all of her work is so good. uh
I wanted to say as well about like hack slash, something that I really love about it. Um, I like it's Zoe's work, I think, isn't very pretentious. I think she lacks in pretension
mhm,
in a very impressive way, where I think if you turn around and you're this young, slightly, young prodigy type in a business, you get nominated for Eisners of your first book, um, and then you turn around and like you do it, a graphic novel that's even more successful, even more awards. It could be very easy to do, to fall into, you get lost in the source and become very pretentious about, your artwork and the meaning of it. And that's something that I love about Hack Slash Back to School being the immediate book after It's Lonely. Like, yeah, it has, it's talking about mental health, it's talking about post-traumatic stress, it's talking about found family. It is also a cheesecake horror book about, you know, uh, kind of girls in anime inspired outfits destroying monsters that look like they came out of Silent Hill, you
mhm,
know? And I really like the lack of pretension there, where there's formal experimentation in it, but it is still a silly and fun book. It's just a really fun read. Especially with like Halloween season approaching, I'm definitely going to be giving another read. Evil Dead would also be like a match made in that. And then her next book is going to be a very, it's a genre fiction graphic novel, but it is also touching on a very visceral subject.
mhm.
So I think it's interesting the way that she's balancing it out, and the constant ebb and flow between this kind of fun, silly genre fiction stuff, and then this very like there's a heart to it all that makes it really not pretentious at all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I would know pretentious because I'm really pretentious a lot of the time. I can't
Well,
lie.
I mean, I think it's good to have some level of pretentiousness as
Yeah,
a
yeah,
creator,
yeah,
and I think that that's just like the characters that she writes. She is a three-dimensional person. And so going
yeah,
from It's Lonely to Hack Slash is just saying
yeah.
I contain multitudes.
Yes.
In in a similar way, like I love him to death.
Yeah,
Chip Zdarsky.
yeah,
Chip Zdarsky went from writing Howard the Duck to
yeah,
Spider-Man to Daredevil to like all of these other books,
yeah,
but he was just known as this like kind of quirky comedy guy, and
yeah,
then writing one of the most beloved Daredevil runs in the modern era.
yeah,
And you have to show that level of, you know, I can be serious, but
yeah,
let me be silly. And
yeah,
that's what I love about those creators, that, you
yeah,
know, they're able to be themselves and put all of themselves in the work. And it's not just, I'm blowing smoke up my ass
yeah,
because
yeah,
I got all of these Eisners. Look at all of these.
yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah,
now I have to keep on like I am just
yeah,
huffing. uh I was about to go like way crazy with that one. Um but like
yeah,
I'm I'm huffing the fumes of everybody gassing me up, so I think that I'm
yeah,
a lot better than I am.
yeah,
And I think that some creators can get lost in that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so going to Hack Slash, and
yeah,
then also like the ice cream man one page
Oh,
that she had for 43, and
ooh,
like it's something that I loved about that, where it's heartfelt but
yeah,
playful,
yeah.
and the cyclical nature of depression and life, and
Hmm.
there's a playful aspect where it's the person going on the board, and
Mm,
one step forward, two steps back, life
yeah,
will always get you, but you have to keep on moving forward. um it contains a lot of the aspects in her work where she
mm,
is just as much a three-dimensional person as every single character that she has a hand in portraying.
yeah, yeah.
So, did you have anything else to note about Zoe, Miss Thorogood?
Oh, over the last like year or two, I guess no, year-ish, Zoe has been posting on Instagram these kind of like comic poems. So it's like poetry combined with comics. First off, I have to hold my hands up and say I cribbed. I used a lot of them as like academic reference materials for stuff that I was doing, where I was also saying, yeah, comics poetry is a thing, guys. Look,
Mm-hmm.
Zoe Thorogood did it, and she got nominated for a bunch of awards. But I think eventually at some point she's planning to collect them all in one kind of like print edition of all of these different comic poems. But even until that point, if that ever does happen, it's really worthwhile just scrolling through her Instagram page and taking a look at them because some of them are just jaw dropping, and they're so with so little, it will just be an image and a couple lines of text, and some of them are just so viscerally moving. Um, and I think it's a really great thing that like some traditional comics readers may miss if they're only paying attention to the stuff that's like currently in print. Yeah,
Yeah, whatever's
yeah,
available and whatnot. And
yeah, yeah,
it's I think it was very funny because whenever I was going through, because I had sent you the League of Comic Geeks list,
yeah,
and I poured through every credit that she had, and I said
yeah,
I want all of this on a list so I can
yeah.
basically check it off. And there were like very underground things that, like, I'm like, how do I get my hands on this? Like I can't even
Yeah.
start to imagine where I'm gonna get the Poppy hardcover, where I looked it up and they're like all completely sold
Hmm.
out, and I'm like, huh,
I
okay.
also I also hate to say it, but a lot of people who ordered that hardcover never got that Poppy hardcover. I know from personal
Really?
experience. Yeah, Z2 Comics, during like kind of first couple of years post pandemic, there's a lot of stuff that just got very lost in the mail. I would always, I'm very open about my hesitation about ordering from Z2. I always say to people, if you live in the States, you're getting the book. If you live outside of the States, it may not happen. It's twice that I've ordered from them that has never arrived. And Z2, if you listen to this, send me my books.
Get on
Yeah,
it
yeah,
now.
yeah. No,
That's I had no idea. Yeah,
yeah.
I
They
I'm
do a lot of
interested.
musician tie-in comics. So a lot of non-comics people end up being like, I ordered this comic and it never arrived.
Oh well, guess that's what all
Oh,
comics are.
yeah, yeah.
But it's like, I was interested in it because I like went through the Reddit of
Mm,
Poppy. I was like, I
yeah,
know her from like YouTube way back in like
yeah,
2016 or something, but I was like,
yeah,
I don't know a whole lot, but let me just look at the Reddit and see if people had said anything about this book. And it was just like some people were asking for a PDF because they were like,
yeah.
I never got it. But I was like, oh, I'm sure that was just like a one case scenario or something.
No, yeah.
That's disappointing.
Um, it's funny. Poppy is one of the best gigs I've ever been to.
Really?
I also got crowd surfed on maybe 14 times. Yeah, one of the craziest mosh pits I've ever been in. It's I'm a big guy. I'm a large gentleman, and they try to pick me
Me
up for crowd
too.
surf. I was like, put me down, put me down.
I didn't know it goes that hard because all I know is
Yeah,
like the first
yeah,
couple of videos from Poppy, and
yeah,
I'm like, what? She talks like a robot or something? Like that's
yeah,
all
yeah.
I knew. So I'm like, she's got
Somewhere along the
lore
way,
now?
somewhere along the way she became a metal musician, and she's killing it. She's doing a great job. So
Hell yeah.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what? That's
yeah,
all right.
yeah,
Somehow this turned into a Poppy. Like
yeah.
so well, I guess we'll leave it there. Well, Jared, if you
Yeah.
want to share where the people can
Oh,
find you and whatnot.
you can find me at Comics Jared on the health site, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Um, you can find my work at Jared Bird over at Comics Beat. Um, I'm always open to DMs, emails, etc. etc. I spend too much time on my computer, so I will probably see it. And I love talking about comics, so there's that. Yeah, that's the main things.
Well, that'll be perfect. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for chatting
yeah.
about Miss Thorogood,
Thank you for
who
having me.
I made a very small joke on Comic Geeks as like one of my
Yeah.
first posts, and I was like, Zoe Thorogood makes comics that are both thorough and good. And
Yeah.
Gianni just replies and said, Kirby, come on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but anyways, we'll leave it there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for watching and good night.